Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, the podcast where Senator Joseph Cryan talks about the latest in New Jersey's 20th Legislative District. This week's guest, Legislative Director of New Jersey VFW, Jay Boxwell.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Cup of Joe Show. We're glad you're here, and thanks so much for joining us. And with me today is someone I admire a great deal, my friend and a true leader in the state of New Jersey, especially on Veterans Affairs, but so much more. He carries such an important voice. I'm very delighted, Jay, we're going to share some conversations today to introduce to you Jay Boxwell. Now, Jay's a Navy veteran. Just ask him, he'll tell you. And he's the current legislative director for the State Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW. And that's just the very tip of the iceberg. But Jay, today we asked you to come on in, talk a little bit about a couple bills that are pretty important to veterans around the state. The bill that dedicates the New Jersey Department of Veterans Affairs, which happens by the number to be S4376. And hopefully a bit of a conversation about the bill that creates a veterans advocate, an important voice for the veterans around the state.
Yes, sir.
But, hey, before we do any of that kind of stuff, my friend, and by the way, again, thank you for taking the ride. Do me a favor, take a couple minutes, introduce yourself to folks, talk about your service. This man that I have the honor of speaking to today has served our country in many different ways and served veterans around this state and around this country in more ways than are, I believe, almost are humanly possible. And I want you to take a couple minutes. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. First of all, Senator, I want to thank you for your years of ongoing support with the veteran community. It just didn't start with COVID. You've been a supporter for veterans many years before that, and we thank you for that. So it's well welcomed and well appreciated for your advocacy that you do on your end. So it's very awesome to have somebody that's in such a prominent position within state legislature to have our backs. And that's what veterans are always looking for. So it is a blessing. So
Vets have always had our backs.
So thank you. So it started out, went into the military right out of high school in the Navy. I enlisted as a Navy corpsman, which folks tend to confuse us. They call us medics, which is very different than an Army medic. Back years ago when I was in, it was two different dynamics. Medics were more geared towards food service and veterinary care and not so much combat medicine. There was just a small demographic with that. Navy corpsman was a large demographic of combat medicine because we also had an opportunity to work side by side with the Marines, and that was called the Green Team, Green Side. Okay. So I had an opportunity as soon as I graduated from my advanced training in corpsmanship to go to the Marine Corps side. And that was my first introduction to combat theater. Deployed down to Honduras, Nicaragua during Iran-Contra back in late 84, early 85, with a unit down there providing support to help oust Daniel Ortega at the time in Nicaragua. From there, I came back, and after that, we were sent over to Libya. That was right after Gaddafi had blown up the Pan American jet, and we were part of the response to try to address Gaddafi's terrorism. From there, I ended up coming back stateside and was on President Reagan's advanced medical team in 1986. Oh. So, and that was very unique because that was a 4-year temporary assigned duty. And that was specifically for the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty ceremony that was up here in New York Harbor. So I came up here, I trained the medical staff on Reagan's specific medical issues and what his current treatment was at Bellevue and at the time St. Vincent's Hospital in Lower Manhattan. And then also trained the medical staff on USS Iowa and the John F. Kennedy because they were the two ships that he was going to be on in the harbor. So really? that was a very prestigious assignment. Being a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old, 19 at the time, my eyes were like, wow, this is amazing. So it was a great experience. My parents got to be involved, and they got to meet President Reagan at the time. They came on as his guests for the International Naval Review in the harbor, and that was fine. So when we finished up that detail, they asked me where I wanted to go. I could go anywhere that the Navy was. And I had no place I wanted to go except on that battleship where I trained the medical team because they were a hand-picked crew at the time. And the medical department was second to none, top of the line. They had won 3 different medical evaluations that the Navy does every year for deployed ships, and they were top notch. So I wanted to be part of that team. So I said I wanted to be there, and went ahead and spent my last 2.5 years at sea on a battleship. So,
Really?
yep, and that was it. And then I got out and I went back to the Marine Corps side out of Red Bank. I was with the Reserve Unit 6th Motor Battalion with probably somebody that you know well, Mike Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
He was a Marine in the unit with me, and spent 2 years there. And then I finally got done. My 6 years was up. And at that point is when I got involved in advocacy. There was a big explosion on the USS Iowa on April 19th, 1989.
Right.
Killed 47 shipmates of mine. I already had been off the boat by 2 months. But it was the largest cover-up in naval history. They blamed it on the sailor, said it was a murder-suicide and whatnot, and that wasn't the case at all. But we started advocating and testifying in front of Senate subcommittees down in D.C. on our training, what we had gone through, as well as fighting with the VA at that point to make sure that our shipmates got the proper care when they were getting discharged for PTSD. Because the Navy had pushed back and had discharged a lot of those folks because they started self-medicating with marijuana and overindulging in alcohol, so they got thrown out with general discharges, bad conduct, which didn't allow them to be eligible for VA benefits. So their shipmates, we got together and started really advocating to get their discharges upgraded and get them qualified for PTSD treatment because it was a horrific accident.
Were you able to do so?
We were, yes. And when I get out of here today, I have a phone call with one of my shipmates that's out in Missouri that is trying to do a claim, and he's been denied a couple times, so he's asking me for some help on how to get through the system and get through the process. But so, yes, it doesn't stop.
Wow. That's
Yep.
quite a story.
So-
The Iowa tragedy was
Horrible.
Was horrible.
Horrible. A lot of good men were lost.
And thinking about that, and good men, and and women, right?
Now, there's no females on shipboard duty at the time.
Not that time,
Yep,
right? But
yep.
transitioning a little bit to today,
Yep.
right? As we look at things, the denial of services, and certainly I think the lack of services provided was part of the impetus for this coalition to come together on this legislation.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, tell me in your own words, as somebody that actually has the creds to talk about it, why the legislation is so important, and what it means for veterans.
So the breakup of the MAVA legislation, or the separation, to give us our own silo. We started out in New Jersey as having a Department of Veteran Affairs. Bob Wallace was the original commissioner at the time, back under Governor Kane at the time. And he maintained that position for 3 or 4 years. And there was success with it. But then when the state was looking to put something together with the National Guard troops and create a joint program as a cost-saving measure, they merged them together. And that's how the MAVA came about, of having the National Guard and having Veteran Affairs come together, being overseen by a general or somebody in a high level in the National Guard overseeing both departments. So we lost that cabinet level position where we had a civilian that was running Veteran Affairs that knew what the veterans' needs were, because Bob was a combat veteran from Vietnam. He was a Marine, and really had the understanding. And he was also a businessman. He ran a bank, and then when he retired from there, he ended up taking over for Veteran Affairs. So he had the business wherewithal as well as the veteran wherewithal, what the needs were. And we somehow got away from that, and it got into where the focus was more on the National Guard and the military aspect, and I get that. The National Guard is a very key piece. But we need to make sure that we have adequate representation at the governor's table when it comes to veterans. I mean, we have, a significant number of veterans, especially that are aging in New Jersey, that we need to make sure that those pieces of their health care, of their supports, of their resources are there. And not just there, that they know that they're out there. And right now, that's the part that's missing, right? If you ask any veteran, walk down the street and say, hey, do you know about the MAVA? First, they're going to say, what the hell's the MAVA?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
They have no clue, right?
No.
If you said to them, how do you get into their PTSD program? They're like, oh, they have one? Like, so there's not the marketing piece and the commercial aspect of it to get that information out there. And I'm not saying that they don't do that, but I don't think it's as robust that if we were uniquely on our own with somebody that was pushing veterans solely, that we could get that information out there. Because there's a lot of avenues that they could be taking advantage of that they haven't. And that's part of the issue why we were pushing for this bill.
So let's talk about the bill a little more in terms of details. So, it creates that principal department that you just spoke of, but it transfers a lot of the relevant programs, actually all of them. You want to talk about that a little bit, just for the veterans that can hear our voice?
Yeah, so, there's going to be no loss for any of the current program that we have, right? So, there's been scuttlebutt over the last 2 years that this legislation was working its way through that, labor's going to be cut, their staffing's going to be cut. As far as I know, our conversations that we've had between yourself and Senator Vitale and senior leadership at the mob, there's going to be real negative impact on staffing. We're going to bring over the same programs that they currently have. And what this is also going to provide, though, besides bringing over this programming, it's going to allow us to focus on that programming and expand some of those offerings. There's a lot of federal offerings that we can tie into that we haven't tied in. There's also a lot of veteran service organizations here in New Jersey that are untapped, that there can be memorandums of understanding with the new Department of Veteran Affairs to help provide service, to help provide transportation, to help get that accountability of where our tax dollars are currently being spent. Because part of the issues that we had before is if we approached the mob, and we did as the veterans of foreign wars, and asked, can you give us the outcomes for your transportation dollars that you gave to every one of the 21 counties in New Jersey? We got a shoulder shrug. We can't provide that kind of information. So that's key for you, in doing the budget and going through the appropriations to say what's working and what's not. Where can we, make that more robust, right? And I think that this bifurcation is really going to help with that process.
Right, and it's a major piece. People don't realize, like you emphasized in the transportation piece, how frustrating it is. And we had a full hearing on folks that literally can't get to an appointment.
Right.
Folks that, obviously served our country and earned the benefits and the rights that they deserve. Yep. And we weren't able to provide, and you're right about that accountability. It's an important piece of this. So, do me a favor, talk a little bit about I just want to throw a couple things and get your point of view on, like the guardianship assistance program for family members. That's part of this, and it's a creation of one. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I know about that guardianship program from the mental health side. And when I was involved in mental health for years, they created a guardianship program in the Division of Mental Health Services and Addiction. And it was used many times for some of our most disenfranchised folks that, were going through some real tough struggles, either with addiction or severe mental illness, that there was allowed to be a guardianship that would be able to help them manage their funds, to help make sure that they're on the right path without taking away all of their access and responsibilities to it. So I think when we're talking about it from a veteran's perspective, it's going to give that level of support that we haven't seen, from a family side and other types of organizations that could potentially come and fill that guardianship role.
So we're talking about expanded supports for things like mental health.
Yes.
Talking about a more focused group that can really keep an eye on the job that's ahead of them.
Right.
100%. So, and we've worked together on this thing, and your leadership is, as far as I'm concerned, between you and Joe Vitale is the reason this bill is simply waiting for the governor's signature that we know is not an if but a when. Right. So we're excited by that. But can you talk to me a little bit about how, so for the veteran on the ground, all right, who's gone through this process, who has dealt with claims, who has gone through the nightmare of healthcare and the concerns with, housing, and we all talk about, you mentioned mental health, we all talk about the concerns that we have with the famous 22 lives every day.
Which is an understatement.
An understatement. You put that in perspective for us and how this will truly affect the folks and things like this.
This is going to give individuals on both sides of the fence, on the service provider side and the state administrative side and the veteran side, a true chance to interact. because right now there's a lack of that interaction. This is going to be a focus solely on the veteran community and their significant others that live here in New Jersey. Whether it's in Menlo Park Nursing Home or Paramus or Vineland, it's going to create more opportunities for those individuals and their family members to interact, to have those conversations. And there's been some safeguards that have been built into this piece of legislation to make sure that there's the ombudsman piece, the advocate piece in the other piece of legislation, to give additional resources to family members should they feel slighted or feel that something hasn't gone the right way, that they have an avenue outside of Veteran Affairs where they maybe, previous years maybe have been disregarded or haven't been listened to totally. That's going to give them an outside avenue to voice their concerns, to have somebody else that is non-biased jump in there and really help advocate and find out what's going on. But, this new legislation for the Veteran Affairs, it's going to open the doors for a much more collaboration between the veteran, the community, veteran service organizations, and the administrative side of Veteran Affairs.
Yeah. I want to explore with you a little more VSOs, right, the Veteran Service Organizations that do so much. You've obviously dedicated your life's mission to this work. But so when you look at the bill, and we're going to talk about the advocate bill in a few moments.
Right.
But when you look at the bill, how does, for example, a VFW, an American Legion, folks like that, we are in the Township of Union as we speak right now, but throughout our communities, folks, groups like this that do so much, how does the bill empower these groups, and in what ways can it allow them potentially to partner a little more with the state?
Well, the hope from the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and part of our collaboration with Senator Vitale and yourself, was to make sure that there is much more collaboration. Right now, as the current DMAVA is, there is minimal collaboration between the veteran service organizations. There's been minimal input. We've had, veteran council meetings that are ghost meetings where there's nothing real substantial that comes out of them. There isn't real policy that's driven by the veteran service organizations, all which are going to be part of the new Veteran Affairs Department, that there's going to be that collaboration, that there's going to be seats of the legacy veteran service groups involved with the planning piece, which is key, because where any veteran affairs organization or silo in government can't fill the needs, where are those needs met? At the veteran service level, right? At the veteran service organization, at the disabled American veterans, at the Veterans of Foreign Wars, at the American Legion. They're the folks that shoulder that burden in their communities where veterans are struggling. So there has to be that collaboration, and that's our hope with this new veteran affairs silo, that there's going to be part of that collaboration and really be reaching across, that barrier to bring everybody to the table.
When I had the honor of chairing the Veterans Committee in the Senate, we did a whole lot of looking at the VSOs. The record of success in terms of how, and nothing, one's government and one isn't, but the nimbleness and the ability of VFWs, Legions, as we've mentioned, to be there, for lack of a better way to put it, on the ground for the veteran. Can you talk about that a little bit more, just that collaboration? Because I don't know if folks today really realize, the fundamental foundation of what these groups bring.
Fair enough. Great question. So I can speak for the Veterans of Foreign Wars in great detail.
Sure.
The American Legion, I know superficially about some of their homeless programs that one of my comrades and counterparts, Bob Luby, manages for the Legion.
Bob does great work.
They do great work. I actually got Bob saved from having his phone ring 24/7 when I met with the Secretary of the VA a couple of years ago, Dennis McDonough from Jersey, and he was getting slaughtered because his phone never stopped ringing. And, he would go to the two VSOs, the Veterans of Foreign Wars and Legion, to say, hey, I have a homeless veteran. Can you guys help house him until we can get him into a program or whatever? So to your question, that's exactly the first line of defense for our homeless veterans. And that is our American Legion DAV and Veterans of Foreign Wars. They're the ones that are going out and providing temporary housing till we can get these disenfranchised veterans into either a shelter, a long-term rehab, a detox, whatever it might be. And that starts the collaboration, not with Veteran Affairs,
right,
with other organizations that we have relationships with that we can get that individual in. So that's where it's key, right? Suicide prevention. The Veteran of Foreign Wars, we've done multiple suicide preventions around the state topics. And that's not necessarily for the veteran. We bring in caregivers or police or anybody that wants to have insight how to respond to a veteran that they think something might be going on, how to ask that question. Are you feeling about hurting yourself? Are you depressed? Are you not sleeping? Are you drinking a lot? What's going on? How to respond to those questions. And it's not, let me walk away because I feel bad, right? Or I don't know how to respond. We give them the tools to help them respond. The other thing that the veteran service organizations do is they provide retreats to veterans. We do one down in South Jersey for veterans at PTSD.
Sure.
They go down there, they spend a week on the beach. You know, we have a clinician that actually is a Green Beret that we work with, and he does it on the beach. We pay for the veterans to go in and work with him, and they do counseling and team building and all kinds of stuff. And it's a pretty robust and physical program. So it's not a mental program. Like you're going to get a workout, you know. But everybody comes out of that and says, "Oh man, the camaraderie! Like it is so great." So there's that connection. But that's where your veteran service organizations, where the rubber meets the road, where they fill those gaps, and their entry points into greater services.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
Because maybe Jay Boxwell has a resource at the VA, right? Maybe Ken Hageman has a research, you know, in a homeless shelter somewhere or a PTSD program. So when you bring all those parties together to have all these different pieces of information, the veteran service organizations bring that together to bring a net for somebody.
Well, I think that's a great lead-in with all their good work and all they do. That we talk a little bit about the sister bill to this, and little sister, we'll say, given the importance of splitting a cabinet-level position. But that is, we've also, and we anticipate the governor signing as well, there's a bill that creates an advocate for the veterans community. And I was hopeful, given all the work you did on that bill, that you might take a couple minutes and comment on it.
Yes, please. Thank you. That was one of the first bills, or first conversations that we had with you and Senator Vitale, that we need to have somebody that could be a watchdog, right? Somebody that can be an advocate. And that started, you know, with COVID, with the complaints that we were getting from family members of relatives that either A, had passed away, or they were being shut out of going to see them at Menlo Park. They felt that the care wasn't robust, or veterans calling our office and saying, hey, I can't get transportation somewhere. The county says that they can't do it, whatever. So when we started looking into it, there was no avenue for individuals to voice their concerns outside of the Department of Military Veterans Affairs. So we came to the point to say that we need to have somebody that's independent, that can start listening to folks and be a resource. Now, we all know that veterans have a high expectation of what they deserve and what they want, right? So, you know, I'm anticipating, you know, this department's probably going to be pretty busy, but you're going to have to sift through, you know, what concerns are legitimately valid. And, you know, it might actually turn more into like a social work position where you're going to have to, you know, talk to folks and make sure they get directed in the right way, where it's not so much a complaint, where it's an education piece, right? So we're looking to see that this is going to be, you know, a great cane or tool for veterans to lean on, right? So if you can't get something immediately and you think you're getting slighted in the veterans community with somebody that's getting funding through the state, this is their avenue to go ahead and try to get something resolved, right? There is going to be that litigious side of it, where this position is going to have subpoena power, so which is a good thing. I mean, what I've seen in the last 5 years, you know, individuals might have been reluctant to respond to questions, but they do respond, you know, over time. This might expedite that process, but I don't anticipate that there's going to have to be a lot of using of the subpoena to get folks to testify. I think over the past couple of years, folks have learned that our veteran service organizations that are out there are going to really continue to advocate, whether there's this, you know, veterans advocate position out there, but they're the true ones that are going to stand up and fight for these veterans and demand answers. So, the subpoena's there as something to use as a tool in your back pocket, but I don't think the advocate's going to have to use it very often, to be honest with you.
And we hope now, right? In the discussions on the formulation of the
Right.
bill, that's exactly what the hope is. And because of the great work of the VSOs and the rest, right, this is an additional voice for folks who can
Correct.
certainly use it.
100%.
So, after Governor Murphy signs this, which we know is going to happen,
Right.
what concerns do you have in terms of the implementation? And I'm shifting back to you now to the
Right.
to the first bill.
Right.
Do you have any concerns in terms of the rollout or anything like that folks should be aware of?
I think our concern is, and I think most veteran service organizations, and I know the Veterans of Foreign Wars, it's one of our biggest ones, and it's been our concern, even with the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, is we need to make sure that we get the right leadership that has the right skill sets, that has the right mindset to take care of veterans. Right? It can't be a retirement home for folks that are coming out of the National Guard that necessarily aren't qualified, that they just need a landing pad because they're retiring from the Guard. We need to make sure that there are individuals that are truly has the insight, has the dedication and the passion to take care of veterans. In the veteran community, we've all been in there, and some of our most greatest advocates and administrators don't have college degrees, right? It's because they live on passion and drive and what is right. And I think that most veterans are just trying to go by what is right. And what we see is we need to make sure that there are the right people that want to do the right thing.
Well, I know one veteran I'm talking to right now who's only focused on what is right.
100%.
And from a career that has spanned, as he's talked about, we didn't even get into your time as the state commander of the VFW and just a variety of different ways that you've advocated. I do want to ask folks, or ask to close kind of with this, because I'm grateful for your time.
Right.
If folks want to give a call to the VFW or to VSOs, can you give us a hand in terms of who they should contact and how?
Yeah, they can contact our state office down in Trenton. I don't have the number right on me.
Okay,
but-
we'll add it in.
So our state office down in Trenton, there's a number there you can call, and that'll be your entry point for our veteran service organizations, our veteran service officers to reach out. You leave your name, your number, where you're at, what part of the state. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, we have 7 veteran service officers throughout the state, South Region, North Region, Central Jersey, that can help you and assist with their claims. We have the most stringent accreditation process in the country for our service officers. They go to training multiple times a year down in Annapolis at a national level, and there's constant trainings that they have during Zoom with our national organization. So, if there's something that they don't know, they have tons of resources down in D.C., and they're one of the best in the world in helping veterans. But you can also go through, currently Department of Military and Veterans Affairs has service officers in each county. At this point, you can reach out through them as well, or stop in. They all have locations in each county. Most of them are in the county administration buildings, where they can drop in and see a veteran service officer too.
Thanks. Here in Union County, where we are, you can stop in the Union County Courthouse.
That's
But
right.
also there's a veteran service officer as part of the county who's on our senior center on Rahway Avenue here
Right.
in Union. So accessibility is there, and there's
That's
also
right.
others as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our phone number here,
Mhm.
as I remind our folks all the time. We have the honor of working for veterans as well as every
100%.
resident in the state. And our number here in the 20th District is 908-624-0880, and we're located right here on Stuyvesant Avenue, Union. But ladies and gentlemen, it has been my honor to have a conversation with a true American hero, and
Thank
a
you.
privilege, and somebody I had the privilege with working with on great legislation. He took an idea and he led us not only to an idea, but to make it great and to make it important
sir.
for people that need it. So with a great deal of gratitude, and I don't mind saying a humility for me to be in your company.
Thanks,
It's been my privilege to talk to Jay Boxwell today. And Jay, I look forward to seeing you at the bill signing. And most importantly, I look forward to seeing you when we continue to help folks in need.
Yes, sir. You've done a great job, and so has your staff. Let's keep it going.
Same back, pal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And before I close, I'd be remiss if I didn't, I think we both want to just say one other time. Let's thank Joe Vitale.
Yes.
Senator Vitale.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Senator.
It's a privilege.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening and enjoying, I hope, another Cup of Joe.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of A Cup of Joe, hosted by Senator Joseph Cryan. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you again for another cup.